The wreckage floated in the darkness of space like a broken toy. Sergeant Jake Mitchell stared at it through his helmet visor, feeling the familiar weight of war settle on his shoulders. The transport ship had been torn apart by weapons fire, its metal hull twisted and burned. Debris drifted everywhere, catching the distant light of a dying star. "Scan shows no life signs," said Private Danny Cole through the radio. He was 20 feet away, moving carefully through the wreckage field. "Whatever happened here, it happened weeks ago." Jake nodded inside his helmet. This was the 5th destroyed ship they had found this month. The war between different factions in this sector had turned space into a graveyard. His job was simple: survey the wreckage, look for survivors, recover any useful data, and move on. It was sad work, but someone had to do it. "Keep looking," Jake said. "Check every section. Command wants a full report." His team of 6 soldiers spread out through the debris. They had done this dozens of times before. Jake moved toward what looked like the main cargo hold. The door had been blown off, leaving a dark opening into the ship's interior. He activated his suit's lights and floated inside. The cargo hold was a mess. Containers had broken open, spilling their contents into zero gravity. Jake saw medical supplies, food packages, and personal belongings floating everywhere. Someone had been living on this ship. Families, maybe. The thought made his stomach tight. He was about to leave when his scanner picked up something strange. A faint energy signature coming from behind a collapsed wall panel. It was weak, almost dead, but it was there. His heart started beating faster. "I've got something," Jake said into his radio. "Southwest section of the cargo hold. Possible power source. Could be a bomb," said Captain Lisa Morgan from the command ship. Her voice was calm but concerned. "Be careful, Jake." "Always am, Captain," Jake replied. He pulled out his tools and started cutting through the metal panel. It took several minutes of work. The panel finally came free, and behind it Jake found a small survival pod. It was old and damaged, but its emergency power was still running. The pod had a small window. Jake shined his light through it and froze. Inside was a child. At least it looked like a child. The being was small, curled into a ball with pale blue skin and silver hair. She had 4 arms instead of 2, and her face was more angular than human, but she was clearly young. Her eyes were closed and she wasn't moving. "I've got a survivor," Jake said quickly. "It's a kid, non-human, Valari, I think." There was silence on the radio for a moment. The Valari Empire was not exactly friendly with humanity. They weren't at war, but tensions had been rising for months. Finding a Valari child in human-controlled space was complicated. "Can you get her out?" Lisa asked. "Working on it," Jake said. He examined the pod's control panel. It was designed to open from the outside in emergencies, but the controls were labeled in Valari script. Jake had learned some of their language during his training. He pressed what he hoped was the right sequence of buttons. The pod hissed and opened. Stale air rushed out. The child inside didn't move. Jake reached in carefully and checked for a pulse. He found it weak but steady. She was alive, barely. Her skin was cold and she looked thin, like she hadn't eaten in weeks. "She's alive but in bad shape," Jake reported, bringing her back to the ship. He carefully pulled the child from the pod and held her against his chest. She weighed almost nothing. As he started to move back toward his team's shuttle, the child's eyes suddenly opened. They were large and golden, and they were filled with fear. She screamed and started struggling in his arms. Her forearms flailed wildly, hitting his suit. Jake nearly dropped her, but managed to hold on. "It's okay," he said, knowing she probably couldn't understand him. "I'm not going to hurt you. You're safe now." The child didn't stop fighting. She was weak, but fear gave her strength. Jake held her gently but firmly, trying not to hurt her. He kept talking in a calm voice, even though she couldn't understand the words. Sometimes tone mattered more than language. By the time he got back to the shuttle, the child had tired herself out. She was shaking and making small whimpering sounds. Jake's teammate, Corporal Amy Torres, came forward with a thermal blanket. "Poor thing," Amy said softly. "She's terrified." They got the child into the shuttle and sealed the airlock. Once they had atmosphere again, Jake removed his helmet and knelt down beside her. Up close, he could see how bad her condition really was. Her skin was pale even for a Valari. Her silver hair was matted and dirty. Her clothes were torn and stained. "Get me some water and food," Jake said. Amy brought a bottle and some energy bars. Jake opened the water and held it out to the child. She stared at him with those golden eyes, not moving. Jake took a sip of the water himself, then held it out again. "See, safe, you can drink." The child hesitated, then slowly reached out with one of her 4 hands. She took the bottle and drank desperately, water spilling down her chin. When the bottle was empty, she looked at Jake with slightly less fear in her eyes. "That's better," Jake said with a small smile. He unwrapped an energy bar and offered it to her. She snatched it from his hand and ate it in seconds. Jake gave her 2 more bars, which she devoured just as quickly. "Easy," he said gently. "You'll make yourself sick." The child sat back against the wall, still watching him. She pulled the thermal blanket around herself with all 4 arms. Jake could see her starting to relax just a little bit. "What's your name?" Jake asked, even though he knew she probably didn't speak his language. He pointed to himself. "I'm Jake." The child tilted her head, studying him. Then in a small, rough voice she spoke. "Lyra." Jake felt a surge of relief. She could understand at least some of his language. "Lyra," he repeated. "That's a pretty name. How long have you been in that pod, Lyra?" She held up fingers on 2 of her hands. 6 fingers total. 6 months, maybe? Jake's stomach sank. This child had been trapped in that pod for half a year, slowly starving, waiting for rescue that almost never came. "Do you know how you got here?" Jake asked carefully. "What happened to your ship?" Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She spoke in Valari, words tumbling out fast. Jake only caught a few words he recognized. "Raiders. Attack. Taken. Scared." "It's okay," Jake said. He moved slowly and sat down beside her, keeping some distance so she wouldn't feel trapped. "You're safe now. I promise." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly she moved closer and leaned against his shoulder. She was shaking. Jake carefully put an arm around her and she didn't pull away. The shuttle door opened and Lisa Morgan stepped in. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and short brown hair. She looked at Jake holding the Valari child and sighed. "We need to talk," Lisa said, privately. Jake carefully moved away from Lyra, making sure she was wrapped in the blanket. He followed Lisa to the front of the shuttle where they could speak without the child hearing. "Command wants us to report this immediately," Lisa said quietly. "A Valari child in human space is a big deal, Jake, especially now." "What do you mean, especially now?" Jake asked. Lisa pulled up a data screen on her wrist computer. "Intelligence reports from the last few days. The Valari Empire has been mobilizing its fleet. They're angry about something. There are rumors that someone important is missing. A member of the royal family." Jake felt his blood run cold. He looked back at Lyra, who was watching them with worried eyes. "You think she's royal?" "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "But we need to find out. Command wants us to bring her to the nearest base for questioning." "She's not a prisoner," Jake said firmly. "She's a scared kid who's been through hell." "I know that," Lisa said. "But this is bigger than us, Jake. If she is someone important and we don't handle this right, it could start a war." Jake ran a hand through his hair, thinking, what if we try to contact the Valari directly? Return her to her people? And if they think we kidnapped her? Lisa countered. Right now, relations with the Valari are on a knife's edge. One wrong move and everything goes to hell, so what do we do? Jake asked. Before Lisa could answer, Lyra made a small sound. They both turned to look at her. She had found a small data pad that one of the soldiers had left on a seat. Her 4 hands moved quickly over the screen, typing something. Amy Torres was watching over her shoulder. "Captain, you need to see this." They moved back to where Lyra sat. On the datapad screen, she had pulled up an image file from the ship's database. It was a news article about the Valari Empire, written in both Valari and human languages. The headline read, "Royal Family Mourns Missing Princess." Below the headline was a picture. It showed a young Valari female with silver hair and golden eyes, standing beside an adult Valari woman who wore a crown. The caption identified them as Princess Lyra and Queen Serena. Jake looked at the child sitting in front of him. She pointed to the picture on the screen, then to herself. Tears ran down her blue cheeks. "Mama," she said in a broken voice. "Want Mama?" Lisa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "Well, that answers that question." Jake knelt down beside Lyra and gently wiped the tears from her face. "We're going to get you home," he said softly. "I promise. We're going to take you back to your mama." Lyra looked up at him with those big golden eyes. Despite everything The command ship was called the Defender, and it wasn't designed for comfort. Jake walked through the narrow corridors with Lyra holding his hand. She stayed close to him, her golden eyes darting nervously at every sound and movement. The other soldiers they passed stared at her with curiosity, but Jake gave them looks that kept them from asking questions. He had set up a small room for Lyra near his own quarters. It was just a storage area that he had cleared out, but it had a bed and some basic supplies. Lyra sat on the bed and looked around the gray metal room with obvious disappointment. "I know it's not much," Jake said apologetically. He pulled out his personal tablet and showed her some pictures. "But look, I can decorate it a bit, make it nicer for you." Lyra looked at the pictures on the tablet with interest. There were images of Earth, of forests, and oceans and mountains. Her 4 hands touched the screen gently, zooming in on a picture of a waterfall. "You like water?" Jake asked. Lyra nodded eagerly. "Me too. When I was your age, my dad used to take me to a lake every summer. We would swim and fish and camp under the stars." He showed her more pictures from his personal files, photos of his family, his parents, his sister Katie, his nephew. Lyra studied each picture carefully, especially the ones with children in them. "Family," Jake said, pointing to the pictures. He then pointed to the image of Queen Serena that they had found earlier. "Your mama, your family. We're going to take you home to them." Lyra's eyes filled with tears again, but she nodded. She trusted him, Jake realized. Despite everything she had been through, despite being surrounded by humans who she had been taught to fear, she trusted him. The weight of that trust felt heavy on his shoulders. The door opened and Lisa Morgan entered with a tray of food. She had replicated several different dishes, not knowing what Valari could safely eat. "Hungry?" she asked Lyra with a gentle smile. Lyra looked at Jake first as if asking permission. He nodded. "It's okay. Captain Lisa is a friend. She's helping us get you home." Over the next few days, Jake learned more about what had happened to Lyra. She spoke broken human language mixed with Valari, and slowly her story came out. She had been on a diplomatic ship with her mother, traveling to meet with another alien species. Raiders had attacked the convoy. In the chaos, Lyra had been separated from her mother and taken by the attackers. They had put her in the survival pod, planning to sell her later. But something had gone wrong. Their ship had been destroyed and Lyra's pod had been left floating in the wreckage for months. "They were bad," Lyra said quietly one night as Jake sat with her. She had trouble sleeping and often woke up screaming from nightmares. "They hurt people. They wanted to sell me." "I'm sorry that happened to you," Jake said. "But you're safe now. Those bad people can't hurt you anymore." "You promise?" Lyra asked in a small voice. "I promise," Jake said firmly. "I won't let anyone hurt you." Lyra moved closer to him and leaned against his side. Jake put an arm around her and she settled in with a small sigh. This had become their routine. When the nightmares came, Jake would sit with her until she fell back asleep. Meanwhile, Lisa was working on the complicated problem of how to return a Valari princess without starting a war. She spent hours each day in secure communications with various contacts trying to find a safe way to make contact with the Valari Empire. "It's not going well," she told Jake during a private meeting. "Every official channel I try gets blocked. The Valari aren't accepting any communication from human sources. They're convinced we're responsible for the kidnapping." "There has to be a way," Jake insisted. "There might be," Lisa said carefully. "I've been in contact with an independent trader who sometimes works with the Valari. He says he can get a message through to the Queen's advisors. But Jake, you need to understand something. The Valari want blood for this. If we show up at their border with their missing princess, they might shoot first and ask questions later." "So what do we do?" Jake asked. "We gather evidence," Lisa said. "We prove that we weren't involved in the kidnapping. We find out who really took her and why." That became their new mission. Jake and his team began investigating the wreckage where they had found Lyra. They recovered data files and ship logs. Slowly, a picture began to form. The raiders who had taken Lyra weren't human. They were a group called the Kethric Syndicate, a criminal organization that operated across multiple sectors. They dealt in weapons, drugs, and sometimes people. But why take a Valari princess? Amy Torres asked as they reviewed the data. That's not their usual style. Too much heat, too much risk. Unless someone paid them to do it, Jake said, reading through an encrypted message they had recovered. Look at this, it's a contract. Someone hired the Ketheric to kidnap Lyra and make it look like humans did it. Who would do that? Amy asked. Jake shook his head. I don't know. But whoever it is, they wanted to start a war between humans and Valari. They collected all the evidence they could find. Logs, messages, recordings. Proof that humans weren't responsible for Lyra's kidnapping. It wasn't much, but it was something. During this time, Jake continued to care for Lyra. She followed him everywhere, like a shadow. She watched while he worked, sitting quietly in the corner with a tablet he had given her. She ate meals with him and his team. Slowly, she started to relax. She even smiled occasionally, especially when Jake told her stories about Earth. What's your world like? Lyra asked one day. They were in the ship's observation deck looking out at the stars. Earth? It's beautiful, Jake said. We have big cities with millions of people, but we also have wild places, forests and deserts and mountains. The sky is blue during the day and dark at night. We have one moon. Not like here with all these different planets. I want to see it someday, Lyra said wistfully. Maybe you will, Jake said. After we get you home to your mama, maybe our people will be friends. Then you could visit. Would you show me? Lyra asked, looking up at him with those big golden eyes. Of course, Jake promised. I would be honored to show a princess around my world. Lyra made a face. I don't like being a princess. Too many rules, too many people watching. Jake laughed. I bet, but you know what? Even princesses need friends. And I'm your friend, right? Lyra nodded seriously. She took his hand with one of hers. Best friend, she said firmly. Those words touched something in Jake's heart. This brave little girl had been through so much, but she still had hope. She still trusted. She still loved. It made him more determined than ever to get her home safely. 2 weeks into their journey, everything changed. They were passing through a contested sector when their sensors picked up multiple ships approaching fast. Lisa's face appeared on Jake's communication screen and she looked worried. We've got company, she said. 6 ships, heavy weapons. They match the profile for Ketheric Syndicate vessels. Jake's blood ran cold. He was in Lyra's room, and she looked up at him with sudden fear. She had heard the alert klaxons too. Are they the bad people? She asked, her voice shaking. Maybe, Jake admitted. He wouldn't lie to her. But we're not going to let them get you. Stay here and hide. Can you do that for me? Lyra nodded, but she was trembling. Jake helped her hide in a storage compartment under the bed. Don't come out until I come get you, he said firmly. No matter what you hear, understand? Yes, Lyra whispered. Be careful, Jake. I will, he promised. He sealed the compartment and ran toward the armory. The Defender was a military ship, but it wasn't a warship. It had weapons for defense, but 6 Ketheric raiders was more than they were designed to handle. The battle started fast and brutal. Energy weapons lit up the darkness of space. The ship shook with impacts. Jake and his team fought from one of the gun positions, targeting the raiders as they swooped in for attack runs. The Ketheric were aggressive and skilled. They weren't just trying to destroy the Defender. They were trying to disable it. They want to board us, Amy shouted over the noise. They must know we have the princess. How could they know? Jake yelled back, firing at another raider ship. Someone told them, Amy said grimly. We have a leak. That was a terrifying thought, but Jake didn't have time to process it. One of the raider ships had latched onto the Defender's hull. They were trying to cut through. Boarding party, deck 3. Lisa's voice came over the intercom. All teams respond. Jake grabbed his rifle and ran. He had to get to Lyra before the raiders did. His team followed him, moving through the corridors as the ship continued to shake from weapon impacts. They reached deck 3 just as the hull breach alarm sounded. The raiders cut through the hull with plasma torches. 6 of them poured through the opening, armed and wearing combat armor. They weren't human. They were a mix of different species, all of them dangerous-looking. The lead raider was tall and covered in scales with 4 arms like Lyra but much larger and more muscular. "Give us the Valari child," the raider leader hissed in broken human language. "Give her to us and we let you live." "Not happening," Jake said, raising his weapon. The fight was short and vicious. The raiders were tough, but Jake's team had training and determination. Energy weapons fired in the narrow corridor, the sound deafening. One of Jake's teammates went down, hit in the shoulder. Amy took down 2 raiders with precise shots. Jake focused on the leader. The big-scaled alien was strong and fast. The Valari border was marked by a line of defense stations, each one bristling with weapons powerful enough to destroy a fleet. As the defender approached, Jake stood on the bridge with Lyra at his side. The little princess had barely left him since he had been wounded, protecting her. Even now she held his hand tightly, her golden eyes fixed on the view screen. "That's my home," she whispered, seeing the Valari stations. "I'm really going home." "Yes, you are," Jake said, squeezing her hand gently. But his stomach was tight with worry. The Valari had refused all attempts at communication. They had ignored every message that Lisa had sent. Now as the defender crossed into the border zone, alarms started blaring across the bridge. "We're being targeted," the weapons officer called out. "Multiple locks. They're powering up weapons. All stop," Lisa ordered. "Hold position. Send the message again." They had prepared a simple message in Valari language. "We have Princess Lyra. She is safe and unharmed. We wish to return her to Queen Serena. We come in peace." For a long moment there was no response. The Valari defense stations remained locked on them, ready to fire. Jake could see sweat on Lisa's forehead despite her calm expression. If the Valari decided to shoot, the defender would be destroyed in seconds. Then the communication screen lit up. A Valari officer appeared, his face hard and suspicious. He had the same blue skin as Lyra, but his was darker, and his 4 arms were crossed over his chest in a gesture that clearly meant distrust. "Human vessel," the Valari officer said in perfect human language. "You will power down all weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in your immediate destruction." "We agree to your terms," Lisa said carefully. "We have Princess Lyra aboard. She is unharmed. We wish only to return her safely." The Valari officer's expression didn't change. "If this is a trick, if you have harmed the princess in any way, your entire species will pay the price. You will hold position. We are sending ships." The screen went dark. Lisa turned to Jake, her face grave. "This is it. They're not taking any chances." Within minutes, Valari warships surrounded the defender. They were beautiful ships, elegant and deadly, shaped like curved blades. One of them docked with the defender, and armed Valari soldiers poured onto the bridge. There were at least 20 of them, all carrying weapons that made the human rifles look like toys. The lead Valari soldier stepped forward. She was female, with silver armor that marked her as high-ranking. Her 4 hands rested on her weapons, and her golden eyes scanned the bridge with cold efficiency. When her gaze fell on Lyra, her expression softened just slightly. "Princess," the soldier said in Valari, dropping to one knee. All the other Valari soldiers did the same. Lyra stepped forward, still holding Jake's hand. "I am Princess Lyra," she said in her native language, her voice stronger than Jake had ever heard it. "These humans rescued me from raiders. They have protected me and treated me with kindness. They wish only to return me to my mother." The Valari soldier stood, but her eyes remained suspicious. They fixed on Jake, taking in his bandages and his protective stance near the princess. "Why does the princess hold your hand, human?" she asked in human language. "Because I'm her friend," Jake said simply, "and she's been through a lot. She needs friends right now." The soldier's eyes narrowed. She spoke rapidly in Valari to one of her subordinates, who left quickly. Then she turned back to Jake. "I am Commander Vasha of the Royal Guard. It is my duty to protect the princess and determine if you speak truth. If you have harmed her in any way, if this is some human trick, you will not live to see another sunrise." "We understand," Lisa said calmly. "We have evidence that proves we were not involved in the princess's kidnapping. We know who was responsible and we have gathered proof. You will present this evidence to the Queen," Vasha said. Her tone made it clear this wasn't a request. You will come to the royal palace and explain yourselves. The queen will decide your fate. Jake felt Lyra squeeze his hand harder. He looked down at her and saw worry in her eyes. It's okay, he said softly. Your mama will understand. We'll show her what really happened. Vasha's sharp eyes caught this interaction. The princess seems attached to you, human. That is unusual. Velari children do not normally trust aliens so easily. He saved me, Lyra said, switching back to human language so everyone could understand. When I was scared and alone, he found me. He gave me food and water. He protected me from the bad people who tried to take me again. He got hurt because of me. Her voice became fierce. Jake is my friend. You will not hurt him. The Royal Guard soldiers exchanged glances. This was clearly not what they had expected. A Velari princess defending a human? It was unheard of. Very well, Vasha said finally. We will escort you to the royal palace. But know this, humans. You will be watched every moment. One wrong move, and you will be dealt with swiftly. The journey to the Velari homeworld took 6 hours. Jake spent most of that time with Lyra, trying to keep her calm. She was excited to see her mother again, but also nervous. She kept asking Jake questions about what would happen. What if Mama is angry at me? Lyra asked at one point. I wasn't supposed to leave her side. That's what my guards always said. Stay close to the queen. Your mama won't be angry, Jake assured her. She'll just be happy you're safe. Trust me, when a parent thinks they've lost their child, nothing else matters except getting them back. You sound like you know, Lyra said, looking up at him. My sister Katie has a son, Jake explained. One time at the mall he wandered off. We couldn't find him for maybe 10 minutes. Katie was frantic, crying, almost losing her mind with worry. When we found him, she wasn't angry. She just grabbed him and held him and cried with relief. That's what real love looks like, Lyra thought about this. I hope you're right. I am, Jake said confidently. He just hoped he wasn't lying. The Velari homeworld was called Valor Prime, and it was stunning. From space, it looked like a blue and silver jewel. The cities were built in harmony with nature, towers of crystal and metal rising from lush forests. As their ship descended, Jake could see gardens and waterways integrated into the urban landscape. It was beautiful in a way that Earth's cities never were. They landed at the royal palace, which sat on an island in the middle of a vast lake. The palace itself was a masterpiece of architecture, with soaring spires and bridges that seemed to defy gravity. Velari citizens had gathered at the landing pad, thousands of them all hoping to catch a glimpse of their missing princess. When the ship door opened, a roar went up from the crowd. The princess! Princess Lyra lives. Lyra stepped out, still holding Jake's hand. The crowd's cheers turned to confused murmurs when they saw the human with her. Guards quickly formed a protective corridor, pushing back the crowds. Commander Vasha led them through the palace. Jake tried to take it all in, the soaring ceilings, the flowing water features, the gardens growing inside the building. It was like nothing he had ever seen, but his attention kept returning to Lyra, who seemed to shrink with each step, becoming more nervous. They entered a massive throne room. It was circular, with a domed ceiling that showed the sky above through some kind of transparent material. In the center, on a raised platform, sat a throne, and on that throne sat Queen Serena. Jake had seen pictures of the queen, but they didn't do her justice. She was tall and regal, with silver hair that flowed down her back like liquid metal. She wore robes of deep blue, and a crown of crystal that caught the light. Her face was beautiful but severe, carved from the same hard determination that had kept her people safe for decades. Right now, that face showed nothing but cold anger. Bring them forward, the queen said. Her voice echoed through the throne room, strong and commanding. Guards escorted Jake and his team toward the throne. Lisa walked beside Jake, her military bearing perfect despite the tension. Amy and the others followed behind. They stopped at the base of the platform, looking up at the queen. Your Majesty, Lisa began, we have returned your daughter safely. We found her in the wreckage of a ship, nearly dead from starvation. We have cared for her and protected her. We come in peace, hoping to prove that humans had no part in her kidnapping. The queen's golden eyes, so like Lyra's but so much colder, swept over them. You expect me to believe that humans suddenly developed compassion? That you found my daughter by chance and decided to return her out of kindness? Her voice dripped with sarcasm. More likely you were part of the plot to take her. And now, seeing that your plan has failed, you hope to win favor by returning her. That's not true, Jake said, stepping forward. Guards immediately raised their weapons, but Jake ignored them. We found Lyra by accident while surveying destroyed ships. She was alone and scared. I couldn't just leave a child to die, no matter what species she was. That's not who we are. Who you are, the Queen said, her voice rising with anger. I will tell you who humans are. You are a violent species, always fighting, always conquering. You spread through space like a plague, taking what you want with no regard for others. And when my daughter went missing, you expect me to believe humans weren't involved? We have proof, Lisa said, pulling out a data drive. Evidence we collected from the raiders who took the princess. Communications, financial. The human team was given quarters in the palace, though they were clearly being watched. Guards stood outside their doors, and Jake was certain there were surveillance devices in every room. He didn't mind. He understood. The Valari had every reason to be cautious. What bothered him more was that he hadn't seen Lyra since the reunion in the throne room. The Queen had taken her daughter away immediately, and hours had passed with no word. Jake told himself that was natural. A mother and daughter needed time together after being separated for so long, but still he worried. Had he done the right thing? Was Lyra okay? He was staring out the window at the alien landscape when someone knocked on his door. 2 guards entered, their expressions neutral. The Queen requests your presence, one said in human language. Come with us. Jake followed them through the palace corridors. They didn't go back to the throne room. Instead, they took him to a smaller, more private chamber. It was beautiful, with walls that seemed to be made of flowing water and a ceiling that showed the stars above. In the center of the room, Queen Serena sat on a simple chair. Lyra was curled up next to her, sleeping peacefully with her head on her mother's lap. The Queen looked up as Jake entered. She had changed from her formal robes into something simpler. Her silver hair was loose around her shoulders. Without the crown and the formal setting, she looked younger, more vulnerable. Her hand rested gently on Lyra's head, stroking her daughter's silver hair with obvious love. Sit, the Queen said, gesturing to a chair across from her. The guards left, closing the door behind them. For the first time, Jake was alone with the Valari Queen. He sat carefully, not sure what to expect. The Queen studied him for a long moment before speaking. Lyra has told me everything, she said quietly. How you found her, how you cared for her, how you protected her from the raiders, even getting wounded in the process. She also told me about the small kindnesses, the food you shared, the stories you told her, the way you sat with her when nightmares woke her in the night. Jake didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. I need to understand, the Queen continued. I have spent my entire life studying other species, trying to understand their motivations. Humans especially have always puzzled me. Your kind can be so cruel, so violent, and yet you can also show such compassion. What drives a human soldier to risk everything for an alien child? Jake thought about the question. I don't know if I can explain it in a way that makes sense, he said slowly. But I'll try. When I was young, maybe 8 years old, I got lost in the woods near my home. I wandered for hours, getting more and more scared. Just when I was about to give up hope, a stranger found me. He was a hunter, someone I'd never met. He didn't know my family. He had no reason to help me, but he did. He carried me on his shoulders for miles until we found my parents. I never forgot that. How a stranger's kindness saved me. The Queen listened intently. When I found Lyra in that pod, Jake continued, I saw that same scared child I had been, lost, alone, terrified. I couldn't walk away from that. I don't think any decent person could, regardless of species. Some things are bigger than politics or war or fear. Sometimes you just do the right thing because it's right. Is it that simple for you? The Queen asked. Just do the right thing? Not always, Jake admitted. I've made mistakes. I've done things in war that I'm not proud of. But with Lyra, it really was that simple. She needed help. I could help. Everything else was just details. The Queen was quiet for a long time, looking down at her sleeping daughter. I thought I would never see her again, she said, and her voice cracked slightly. For 6 months, I searched everywhere. I sent ships to every corner of known space. I threatened war, offered rewards, made deals with criminals and information brokers. Nothing worked. Every day that passed, I felt a piece of my heart die. I started to accept that she was gone. Tears fell silently down the Queen's blue cheeks. And then you appear carrying my daughter, asking nothing in return. How am I supposed to respond to that? All my rage, all my plans for revenge, all my hatred toward humans. It all seems foolish now. You were protecting your people, Jake said. Any leader would have done the same. But I was wrong, the Queen said firmly. I blamed an entire species for something they didn't do. I was ready to start a war that would have killed millions, all because I assumed the worst. That is not the sign of a wise ruler. That is the sign of a mother blinded by grief. She looked up at Jake with those golden eyes so much like Lyra's. You said earlier that you're judged by how you treat strangers. By that measure, I have failed. I treated you as an enemy before I knew the truth. But you, Jake Mitchell, you treated my daughter as you would treat your own people, with kindness and care. That speaks to the content of your character. I just did what anyone would do, Jake said. No, the Queen disagreed. Not anyone. Many people would have seen an opportunity. They would have tried to use Lyra for political gain or ransom. Some would have killed her to prevent complications. You chose compassion. That is not common, Jake, in any species. Lyra stirred in her sleep, making a small sound. The Queen immediately returned her attention to her daughter, her hand gentle on Lyra's head. The princess settled again, peaceful. She talks about you constantly, the Queen said with a slight smile. Jake this, Jake that. She's shown me the pictures you shared with her. Told me the stories you told her about Earth. She wants to visit your world someday. She wants me to make you an ambassador so you can come back and visit her. She's quite insistent about it. Jake felt his heart swell with affection for the brave little princess. She's an amazing kid. You should be proud of her. She's been through so much, but she never lost hope. Never lost her ability to trust and love. She learned that from her father, the Queen said quietly. He was like that. Always seeing the best in people. Always believing that tomorrow could be better than today. He died 3 years ago and I became harder, colder. I forgot how to see the world through hopeful eyes. But Lyra remembered. And somehow, despite everything she's been through, she still has that hope. The Queen looked at Jake again. I protected that hope. You kept it alive when others would have crushed it. For that you have more than my gratitude. You have my respect. Thank you, Your Majesty, Jake said sincerely. Serena, the Queen corrected. When we are speaking as two people who both love my daughter, you may call me Serena. That felt like a significant honor. Jake nodded. Thank you, Serena. The Queen stood carefully, not wanting to wake Lyra. She gestured for Jake to follow her to a table where a data screen was set up. Your Captain Morgan provided evidence about the conspiracy. I have had my intelligence officers review it. They confirmed that it is authentic. The Kethric Syndicate was indeed hired to kidnap Lyra and make it appear as though humans were responsible. She pulled up files on the screen, showing communications and financial transfers. The one who hired them is a Valari noble named Lord Krenth. He is part of a faction that has long opposed peace with humanity. He orchestrated the kidnapping to push me toward war. Jake felt cold anger settle in his chest. One of your own people did this? Yes, Serena said, her voice hard. Someone I trusted. Someone who had access to Lyra's security schedule. He used my daughter as a tool in his political games. He almost started a war that would have destroyed millions of lives on both sides. What will happen to him? Jake asked. Justice, Serena said simply. Swift and certain. He will answer for his crimes, as will everyone who aided him. She turned off the screen and looked at Jake. But that still leaves us with a larger problem. My people are angry. They wanted someone to blame for Lyra's disappearance. Many of them were ready for war with humanity. Lord Krenth fed that anger, used it for his purposes. Now I must convince my people that humans are not the enemy. That will not be easy. What can I do to help? Jake asked. You have already done more than I could have asked, Serena said. But if you are willing, I would like you to stay for a few days. Let my people see you with Lyra. Let them see the human who saved their princess. Sometimes the best arguments are not made with words, but with actions. I'll stay as long as you need me, Jake said. A door opened, and Lisa Morgan entered with 2 Valari advisors. She looked tired but determined. Your Majesty, she said with a slight bow. We've been in contact with our government. They're relieved that Princess Lyra is safe and eager to improve relations with the Valari Empire. They're proposing a formal treaty negotiation. I would welcome such negotiations, Serena said. But first I must address my people. They need to know the truth about what happened. Over the next 2 days, things moved quickly. The Queen held a public ceremony where she revealed the conspiracy. Lord Krenth was arrested, along with several of his co-conspirators. The evidence was presented to the Valari Council. which voted unanimously to open formal diplomatic relations with humanity. Jake attended these events at Serena's request. Standing beside her and Lyra, the Valari people were curious about the human who had saved their princess. Some were still suspicious, but many seemed willing to reconsider their views of humanity. Through it all, Lyra stayed close to Jake. She held his hand during public. 6 months had passed since Jake Mitchell returned Princess Lyra to her mother. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways that few could have predicted. The war that had seemed inevitable between humanity and the Valari Empire never happened. Instead, something remarkable took its place. Jake stood in the newly opened Earth Embassy on Valar Prime, looking out at the city that had become his second home. The embassy was a beautiful building that combined human and Valari architecture, a symbol of the alliance that was growing stronger every day. Behind him, he could hear his assistant sorting through the daily reports and communications. He still found it strange to have an assistant. He was a soldier, not a diplomat. But life had a way of surprising you. "Jake," a familiar voice called out. He turned to see Lyra running down the embassy corridor, her silver hair flowing behind her. She had grown in the past 6 months, was taller now, more confident. But she still lit up when she saw him, still ran to him like he was the most important person in the world. "Hey, Princess," Jake said with a grin, catching her as she launched herself at him for a hug. "Aren't you supposed to be in your etiquette lessons right now?" "I finished early," Lyra said, which probably meant she had convinced her tutor to let her leave. She was good at that. "Mama said I could come visit you. She wants to know if you're coming to dinner tonight." "I'll be there," Jake promised. Dinners with the royal family had become a regular thing. At first it had been formal and awkward, but over time it had become comfortable, natural even. Serena treated him like an old friend now, and Lyra treated him like family. "Good," Lyra said, settling into a chair by the window. "Because I have news. Big news." "Oh, yeah?" Jake sat down across from her. "What kind of news?" "The school exchange program got approved," Lyra said excitedly. "I'm going to Earth for a whole semester. I get to see everything you told me about, the forests and oceans and mountains, the cities and museums, everything." Jake felt a surge of pride and happiness. He had been working on the student exchange program for months, trying to get approval from both governments. It had been complicated with security concerns and cultural differences to navigate, but now it was real. "That's amazing," he said sincerely. "Earth is going to love having you." "Will you be there?" Lyra asked, suddenly worried. "I know you travel a lot now with the diplomatic work, but I want you to show me around like you promised." "I'll be there," Jake assured her. "I already requested to be assigned to Earth for that semester. I want to be the one who shows you my home." Lyra's face broke into a huge smile. She jumped up and hugged him again. "Thank you, Jake. For everything. For saving me. For being my friend. For making all of this possible." "You're the one who made it possible," Jake said, ruffling her silver hair. "You were brave enough to trust me when you had every reason to be scared. You spoke up for humans when your people wanted to blame us. You're the hero in this story, not me." "We're both heroes," Lyra decided. "Different kinds, maybe, but both important." The door opened, and Commander Vasha entered. The Valari soldier had become less hostile over the months, though she still watched Jake with careful eyes. She respected him now, he knew that. But she was a royal guard, trained to be suspicious of everyone. "Princess," Vasha said with a slight bow, "your mother needs you. There's a situation that requires your presence." Lyra sighed. Being a princess is so boring sometimes, so many meetings and ceremonies. She turned back to Jake. "See you at dinner?" "See you at dinner," Jake confirmed. After Lyra left with Vasha, Jake returned to his work. Being the human liaison to the Valari Empire was complicated and often frustrating, but also incredibly rewarding. Every day brought new challenges, cultural misunderstandings to resolve, trade agreements to negotiate, security protocols to establish. But slowly, steadily, the two civilizations were learning to work together. Lisa Morgan arrived an hour later for their weekly meeting. She had been promoted to admiral and now commanded the human fleet assigned to this sector. She looked tired but satisfied as she sat down in Jake's office. "Good news," she said, pulling up a data screen. "We've finalized the joint military operation against the Kethric Syndicate. Combined human and Volari forces will launch coordinated strikes against their bases next week." "About time," Jake said. The Kethric had been a thorn in everyone's side for too long. They dealt in weapons, drugs, slavery, and worse. Taking them down had become a priority for both governments. "It's bigger than just taking down criminals," Lisa continued. "This will be the first major joint military operation between humans and Volari. It's symbolic. It shows that we can work together, trust each other." "Any word on whether they've found the rest of Lord Krenth's conspirators?" Jake asked. "Most of them are in custody," Lisa said. "But a few escaped, including Krenth's second-in-command. Intelligence suggests they've joined up with other anti-peace factions. They're still trying to sabotage the alliance." "Of course they are," Jake said with a sigh. "There will always be people who prefer war to peace, people who profit from conflict." "True," Lisa agreed. "But they're losing. The public opinion polls are clear. Most Volari citizens support the alliance now. And on the human side, approval, ratings for diplomatic relations with the Volari are at an all-time high. The extremists are a minority and they're getting smaller every day." They spent the next hour reviewing various reports and discussing upcoming events. There was a lot happening. Trade delegations were visiting both worlds. Cultural exchange programs were starting. Scientists were collaborating on research projects. The alliance was growing in ways that went far beyond simple political agreements. That evening, Jake went to the royal palace for dinner. It was a smaller gathering tonight, just the immediate royal family and a few close advisors. Serena greeted him warmly, gesturing for him to sit at her right hand. Lyra bounced in her seat with excitement, already talking about her plans for Earth. "She hasn't stopped talking about the exchange program," Serena said with an amused smile. "I think she's driven her tutors to distraction with all her questions about human culture." "I can imagine," Jake said. "She's going to love Earth, and Earth is going to love her." Dinner was a pleasant affair, with good food and better conversation. They talked about everything and nothing from politics to personal stories. Jake shared memories of his childhood and Serena told tales of Lyra's early years. For a few hours, they were just people enjoying each other's company. After dinner, Serena asked Jake to walk with her in the palace gardens. It was a beautiful night with 3 of Valar Prime's moons visible in the sky. They walked in comfortable silence for a while before Serena spoke. "I wanted to thank you again," she said quietly. "Not just for saving Lyra, but for everything that came after. You could have simply returned her and left. Instead, you stayed. You worked to build bridges between our peoples. You turned a tragedy into an opportunity for peace." "I just did what felt right," Jake said. "That seems to be your standard response," Serena said with a slight smile. "But I want you to understand the magnitude of what you've accomplished. 6 months ago, our civilizations were on the brink of war. Now we are allies, friends even. That happened because you showed compassion to a child. One act of kindness created a ripple effect that changed everything." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "I have been thinking about the future, about what kind of galaxy I want Lyra to inherit. I realized that I wanted to be a galaxy where species work together instead of fighting, where compassion is valued over conquest, where people like you, people who choose kindness over hatred, are celebrated and empowered." "That's a beautiful vision," Jake said. "It's more than a vision," Serena said. "I'm making it a reality. I've been in talks with other species leaders. We're forming a coalition, a group of civilizations committed to peace and cooperation. We're calling it the Galactic Unity Alliance." Jake felt his heart beat faster. "That's ambitious." "It is," Serena agreed. "And it will face opposition. There are many in the galaxy who profit from conflict and division. But I believe it can work, because you proved that it can work. You showed that bridges can be built across even the widest divides." She pulled out a data pad and handed it to Jake. "I want you to be one of the founding members, a human representative in the Alliance. Your role would be similar to what you're doing now, but on a larger scale. You would work with multiple species, helping to resolve conflicts and build understanding. Jake looked at the datapad, seeing the proposal outlined there. It was overwhelming and exciting and terrifying all at once. "This is a big responsibility," he said. "I know," Serena said. "But if anyone can handle it, you can. You have a gift, Jake. You see past differences to the common humanity, or whatever the equivalent is for each species in others. That's rare and valuable." "Can I think about it?" Jake asked. "Of course," Serena said. "Take all the time you need. But know that I believe in you. Lyra believes in you. And whether you accept this role or not, you will always be part of our family." They walked back to the palace in silence, Jake's mind churning with possibilities. His life had changed so much in the past 6 months. He had gone from being a simple soldier to being a bridge between worlds. It was